Hello everyone, my name is Gracian and welcome to episode 0 for Against the Storm. So this will serve as a tutorial and introduction to what is a fantastic game that I am completely addicted to at the moment. Check out the reviews of this game on Steam. As of the recording of this, they are overwhelmingly positive. They've been 96 to 98% positive since it came out in November, early November. So Against the Storm is a game by Aramite Games, and it's published by Hooded Horse. This is a roguelite city builder set in a dark world that is plagued by these constant cycles of violent storms. In the game, you will scavenge for food, you will learn building blueprints to give you more advanced things you can build and do. You will unlock special, powerful perks to make each little town that you build unique. So it's sort of like a run-based system, but instead of an action game or a strategy game, this is a city builder game where you will get perks like producing extra of a resource or bonuses to certain types of people in your town. It's very, very interesting. You will explore into dangerous and forbidden glades to find rare resources and often deadly encounters, such as a haunted crypt or a forsaken temple or a cauldron of green goo that's going to explode if you don't deal with it soon. There's a lot of reasons why I'm completely obsessed with this game right now, so if you like any of the following, then you might want to check this game out. I absolutely love city builder games. I have dozens of them. The content is randomly generated, so the content in this game stays fresh. You can do a run in probably an hour or a little bit more than that, and then you start a new town, and you've got different resources, different kinds of trees, different glade events, all sorts of different randomly and procedurally generated things are going to be happening. Sometimes you're given the choice between several very important building blueprints, and it can be very difficult to choose which one of those to take, not knowing if you're going to see the blueprints for those other buildings again during that particular run. So you have to sort of have resource production chains in mind, have sort of an end game in mind as well when you're making these decisions. The meta progression is very fun. You get to unlock mostly food, but there's other kinds of resources you can get by completing each town, and you take that back to the capital city and you get meta progression upgrades. The meta progression rewards are things as simple as a % bonus to resource production, and as exciting as like special blueprints that you start the game with. The game has a low fantasy setting, so it allows for all sorts of weird and wonderful things to happen, but also keeping the city building aspect grounded and understandable. So everything makes sense. So you've got lumber coming into the carpenter, making you planks that's going into building your houses. That all makes perfect sense. And then on the other side of your city, you're opening up a glade to a cursed ruins where settlers lost their lives before, and you need to calm their spirits or they'll get mad and kill your villagers. It's very, very cool. The juxtaposition of the very logical city building with the very mysterious glade events makes the game very, very fun and interesting. So that'll serve as my little introduction to Against the Storm. It's not per se a review, but I will tell you that I would also rate this game personally overwhelmingly positive. This is definitely in the high 90% for me in terms of how great this game is. There's barely anything I would change, and the developers are listening to the players. As of right now, there have been some posts that were like, hey, we're thinking about changing the way camps work to do this. Players said, we don't like that, and they said, okay, we'll change it, we'll try this instead. That's very, very good. I love when developers ask questions about the future of a game and listen to the answers that they get. Very refreshing. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Live Gracian, who's going to start talking about the actual rest of the game, setting up a run and that kind of thing. Again, this is an episode 0. There will be no gameplay. I will not take the game off pause in this episode. We're just going to talk about setting up a run, all the resources, the meta progression. We'll go into a town, and then we'll take a look at the starting buildings and the sort of idea of the game. And from there, I will show off how to play the game and what to do in the next episode. This is a very important episode if you have not played the game. If you have played the game and you're just interested in some gameplay, you're going to want to skip most of this one and go to episode 1. If you're curious if this game is for you and you want to know how everything works before you go into it, because there is a bit of a learning curve to the game, then you're going to want to watch this episode 0. There is a tutorial in the game. It does a pretty good job of explaining all the core mechanics, so definitely play that. All right, welcome back everybody to Live Gracian. So we're going to start a run in Against the Storm. I'm going to show you how everything works, how to set up a run, all the important things you need to know. And then we will go into the town at the end of that and kind of take a look at everything. And then we will start the gameplay itself in the next episode, episode 1. So come with me. Let's go into play. There are updates every 2 weeks on Thursdays. Keep note of that because your saves, if you have a current city that you're running, it will be lost. So watch out for that. Okay, so in the center of the overworld, this is the overworld map here. You can see there's sort of a dark, stormy weather everywhere around us. And if you go out to the edges, it gets very dark and spooky out here. I have not made it this far out yet, but I am definitely excited to see what hell awaits me out here. So I have played more than 3 towns. It looks like there's only 3, but that's because at the end of each of these cycles, the world resets. We'll talk about that in a moment. In the center of the map is the Smoldering City. This is the capital city in this like nice warm volcano where the queen sits, and she uses her incredible power to protect the people of this world from the blight storm, which comes at the end of this meter. A giant, terrifying storm will destroy everything in the world and restructure it, sort of shuffle everything around, and only the queen's magic keeps us safe. With that being said, the queen is the one that sends us out every time the blight storm subsides to collect resources by setting up these towns, scavenging as much as we can, grabbing all the eggs, the roots, the meat, the herbs, the vegetables, and sending resources, wealth, and food back to the capital so the queen can continue to support her people. Pretty sure the queen's a good guy here, not 100% sure. So when the blight storm comes, like I said, it destroys and remakes the whole world and will sort of shuffle the land tiles around, so this will look completely different, as well as these special nodes here, like this bandit camp. And you can see there's more of them out in the darkness that we haven't found yet. There's tons of these special nodes. And they do all sorts of interesting things, like this one, for instance, is going to add extra food. You can see the symbol, and this one will add these amulet things and these machine parts. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So in the UI, let's go over the UI. We have up here our food stockpiles. This is a basic currency for the realm. These are meta progressions. So when we go into the Smoldering City, which we'll do in a moment, you will use these to unlock your perks that you keep permanently for the rest of the time you're playing this game. So we have the food stockpiles, machinery, and artifacts. You can see we can get a couple of those rarer ones over here. We can get an extra boost of food here. Any spot you settle will give you rewards. You can see there's the Royal Woodlands, and it gives you a reward of 42 food stockpiles. If I were to go over here off from this city of Paulbrain, we would get here 36 food, 9 artifacts, and 9 machinery, but there's an added effect. There's a skull with a sword through it up there in the top left, and we'd have to go in here to see what that is, but we'll look at that in a moment. Up here we have daily expeditions, which I haven't unlocked yet. It's in the tech tree. Here's your options menu, and then down here is the cycle progress. So this shows how much time is left before the next blight storm comes. So first I settled Meatville, then Paulbrain, then I did Sausageburg. Don't ask. And so now I have, it looks like 2 cities left before the blight storm will come. So let's head into the Smoldering City now and talk about the meta progression there. So again, there's going to be some spoilers, but this is important information. I'm not like super far through the tree. So you can see here's a lot of the sort of art from the city being upgraded as it goes. That's cool. At first you'll just have this citadel, and then over time you'll add these extra structures just as you build stuff. So if we go to deeds, these are both achievements in-game and sort of Steam achievements. They will give you experience. These are like little things you can work towards, like win a game near the Barren Lands modifier and you get this building reward. Or win a game near the Levitating Monument modifier and you get extra experience. The experience will level up your citadel. So right now I'm at level 9 and I'm about, 3/5 of the way through to level 10. If you go to buy upgrades, this is where you spend your meta progression upgrades, resources. So you can see I've upgraded all of these things. So you start at the bottom. This one allows you to unlock deeds. So the first thing you unlock gives you the ability to get these achievements. And then you unlock all sorts of cool stuff. Like, for instance, here is a +3 permanent bonus to trader arrival speed and allows you to establish trade routes with other settlements. Up here, all resource nodes get a permanent +1 to charges, so you can harvest more resources out of each node. And you get a house for humans in your building pool that you don't have to get a blueprint for anymore. There's all sorts of other cool stuff, like here's -2% to the speed at which the queen's impatience grows, so that actually makes you have more time to play each town, and allows you to pay Amber to reroll blueprints that are offered to you. So there's just a ton of stuff in here. There's tons of passive bonuses and new powers that you just didn't have access to before. And you can see this tree is pretty big tree. At level 16 gets you the final upgrade, and you can see the cost goes way up as you go. So let's head back out of there. So there's the smoldering city. That's your meta progression system. When the Blightstorm comes and destroys everything, you will keep all of those upgrades you had there. When you want to start a run and start a new town, you have to pick a location, and you can see anywhere that the arrow will reach to, you can click. So I can't start over here, it's too far away, but I could start here because it's a certain distance from the city, or I can start a certain distance from a previous town. So like here. I can't see any further in, so I can't select in here. So there's all kinds of different types of terrain, some of which I haven't even seen yet because I'm not far enough away from the capital. So let's go over the easiest one, is the Royal Woodlands. So let's go in here and let's talk about that really quickly. The Royal Woodlands are very lush and rich in timber. Trees give more wood. Okay, so here I've got this reddish one here. This is the Scarlet Orchard, which was recently updated two or 3 weeks ago, I think now, from the recording of this. This one has Royal Archaeologists. You gain access to a new essential building, Archaeologist Office, and there are going to be ancient excavation sites. These are very interesting. It's a very late game building. Like, you build archaeologists and you have to pump a lot of advanced resources into the archaeology site, but then you can unearth like these really cool skeletons, and the queen really wants information on ancient creatures, so you get a ton of rep with her by doing that. So the Scarlet Orchard is fun. By the way, the trees are different in each biome, like visually as well as the resources that come from the trees. It's very cool. Here we have the marshlands. So the marshlands, gathering speed is increased by 10% for every 2 workers assigned to gathering camps. So by the end of the game, if you have, say, 4 gathering camps, each with 2 workers, every gatherer is working 40% faster. Pretty fun. There are also giant organisms. So giant resource nodes can be found in Forbidden Glades. And these nodes are very cool. Like, there was one that I saw that was a huge glowing, like, herb tree plant thing with like a nut growing on the end of it, and it had like 1,000 charges of food in it, enough to last the rest of the game and more. That was very cool, and there's different kinds of those. There is, let's see, I know there's more. Here we go, the Coral Forest. This is my favorite one. That's because the vegetation here has mutated into unique strands. So there are trees that give you wood and plant fiber, wood and meat, and wood and stone and incense, and one of them also gives you crystallized dew. So the trees are made up of weird stuff like meat and stone. It's very weird and cool. This also has inspiring presence. Villagers have a 5% chance of earning bonus yields from production and gathering for each hostility level. We'll go over hostility level when we get into the game proper. There is one more here. There's the Cursed Royal Woodlands. Yeah. So Cursed Royal Woodlands has restless spirits can be found in the forest, and these will be not good. And the forest has reshaped itself. It's impossible to recognize the danger of the glades, which are now all of even size. So that means that when you're digging into these little dangerous areas, you won't know if you're coming across something good or bad ahead of time, which we'll talk about when we get in there. So that one, this is all difficult here. So if you're going for more of an easier run at first, I would stick to the Royal Woodlands. It makes life a lot easier. I would also suggest playing with like the Coral Forest maybe, but I would definitely say Royal Woodlands will give you your most normal experience in this game and is probably a good one for your first choice. Okay, so when picking our expedition, we want to pick a location that's going to give us a large amount of resources. So you can see this is 42, that's 42. If we go over here, because it overlaps with this town, it was only 30. So we want to make sure we pick a spot that's going to give us as much as we can, because after 2 more settlements, everything gets reshuffled anyway. So we could go someplace like this and get 36. Where is that? Here it is, 36 food, 9 artifacts, 9 machinery, and 70 experience. And the modifier of Bandit Camp means that traders are afraid and will not visit this area. Trading and trade routes are not available. Now, that's probably something I don't want to do because I want to be able to show you the trading system because it really makes life a lot easier and it lets you do some really interesting, cool stuff. So we're not going to pick this spot. I'll probably do this one not for YouTube. But over here, we have the Royal Outpost. So this will make the proximity of the Royal Outpost makes it easier to communicate with the Crown. The pool of order choices will increase by 1. So every so often, when the Queen sends us demands for resources to send back to the city, which is of course our job out here, we will have extra choices between those, which will make it easier for us to plan for the future what we want to do. Now this is kind of a boring one, it's just the regular trees, but we can get resin and eggs and plant fiber out of the trees. And trees will give more wood, so we won't have any problems with our fuel sources. In the summary, we can see we'll get the 45 food and 70 experience. There's an average amount of soil that tells us that farming is viable. You can choose your difficulty. We'll talk about that in a second. We've got our map size as medium. And we have, again, the Royal Outpost and the extra wood. So the natural resources is important to look at. So the things we're going to be able to find on the map that have spawned in when we open glades up will be clay, plant fiber, eggs, roots, berries, meat, insects, sea marrow, vegetables, and mushrooms. So you can see tons of basic resources plus wood. We won't have access to stone, and we won't have access to several other kinds of things like copper, coal mines, anything like that. So what we want to do here is pick our embarkation bonuses. So we have 5 points and we can spend those on these resources to just give ourselves a little bit of a bonus to start off with. So what I want to do here is grab stone because stone can be used to make better pathways, and I like to surround the starting building in a faster pathway because they're going to be using that a lot. So I'm going to take that. That's 2 of our points. I'm not going to need clay. I'm not going to need wood because I get extra wood. We can find meat and eggs. We can find roots and vegetables. So since we can find all of this stuff, I'm just going to spend 3 points on like some of the most stuff I can get, which looks like it would be, this is 2 points. So let's go with meat, eggs, and roots. So I'm just going to start with a bonus amount of food. That'll just help us out for the whole game. To be honest, the most likely way you're going to lose is by running out of food. Food can be a problem if you don't have a grasp on how much you need to be producing. So we've gone over the summary and the modifiers and the bonuses. Now let's look at the caravans. So in this game, there are 4 races. There are humans, there are beavers, there are harpies, and there are lizards. When you go out on an expedition, you have 2 at the start. There's a 3rd one that I haven't unlocked. You have 2 caravans available to you. Now, this one would give me only harpies. And then the next 2 factions you get, you'll always have 3 at some point, are mysteries. So if I want to ensure that I have beavers in my caravan, I would start with this one and this one so that I make sure this isn't, because this could be human and lizard later on, whereas this one I'm positive I get beavers. In my opinion, harpies are the worst. So I'm going to start with this one because at least I get some beavers. And I can't change this, unfortunately. This also determines your starting bonuses. These don't tend to change very much at all. I can see it's almost exactly the same thing. You'll also start with 2 random people. They could be harpies, beavers, or part of the 3rd faction. So this is where this is important to note because I know I'm not going to have both humans and lizards, which means They get different bonuses, like humans are good at brewing and harvesting, and lizards are good at like making meat and like certain types of food production like that. So I know that there's going to be certain bonuses I'm not going to have access to in the game. So just something to keep in mind. So we're going to take this caravan. We're going to select our difficulty. So I'm just going to go on Pioneer, which is just sort of the normal, I would say. Settler is easy. This is normal. And you can do Veteran and Viceroy. The thing that this changes is actually here in the modifiers. We will have 2 positive things going on during the cycles of weather and 3 negative things. If we change it to Settler, we'll have 2 positive and 1 negative. If we change it to Veteran, 1 positive and 4 negative. So this can really make life difficult. Viceroy is the same, but it adds another modifier to how quickly bad things happen. So we're going to go with Pioneer. We need to name our settlement. We're going to name this like and subscribe to YouTube. Okay, and so now we are ready to embark. All right, so we get our introduction screen here. This is very important to take a look at. So there are 3 seasons in the game. There's Drizzle, then there's one called Clearance, which doesn't ever have modifiers, and then one called Storm. The Drizzle is where you plant things and where you get your good bonuses. And then the Clearance is where you harvest crops and basically nothing else happens, but you're preparing for the storm. And then the Storm is where bad things happen. During the storm, you will get all kinds of negative things. There's always this one called Looming Darkness. So you get -4 to global resolve for each hostility level. Hostility level is something that rises over the course of the game as you chop down trees and discover glades and things like that. It's just gonna go up over time. So you can see here, like my Harpy's starting morale, it's kind of grayed out over here, is only 5. So a -4 is putting us perilously close to 0. And when your morale hits 0, people start leaving eventually. So it's very important to get on your resolve and your food, because those are the ways you're going to start losing people. When we get to hostility 1, we will get this modifier and this modifier. You can tell by the little 1 here. When we get to hostility 3, we'll get this one. This one's probably really bad. Right now we're at hostility 0, you can see up here. We'll talk about that again when we go over the UI. So let's talk about the good things first. During Drizzle, the first season, which is where we start, we have bleeding trees. A red sticky substance is oozing out from beneath the tree bark. Gain 2 resin every time woodcutters cut down a tree. That's fantastic. Resin sells pretty damn well to traders and can be used for a couple of different crafting things. So having lots of resin, fine by me. We'll have lots of money to buy stuff from traders. And Finders Keepers. After each storm, caravans find countless goods scattered along the routes. During Drizzle season, every completed trade route will give you 5 random packs of goods. Okay, so if we do trade routes during Drizzle, we will get random stuff. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. We usually can send those back to the capital for sort of reputation. And then the bad things we have Unearthly Element at Hostility 1. The Firekeeper's power weakens in the face of an otherworldly force. The maximum amount of sacrifice stacks in the Ancient Hearth is lowered by 1. That's a lot of new information. We don't really have to worry about that one. Fog. A veil of moisture obscures vision. It's hard to walk in these conditions. Villagers with this effect move 40% slower. They're exhausted unless, it says down at the bottom, to prevent, fulfill the needs for housing. So if they have houses, if they're not homeless, then they don't get that. So that'll be fairly easy to deal with as well. And then the level 3, which is going to be really bad if we get to there. Sudden drop of temperature can cause extreme hunger. Villagers with this effect have 50% chance of consuming double the amount of food, and that is prevented by feeding them complex food. So if they're just eating random roots and mushrooms they picked up off the forest floor, they have a chance to have to eat too much food. But if you're giving them complex food like skewers or biscuits or something like that that you've cooked using multiple ingredients, then they won't have that debuff. That's a little bit harder to deal with. There's definitely games where your complex food engine is weak and some games where it's really good. So we'll see how we go with that. And then the additional effects are, of course, the Royal Outpost and the Gift of the Woodlands that we talked about already. Okay, so we're going to start paused. Here are our starting buildings. We only ever start with these 2, as far as I know. We've got the Ancient Hearth, And this is kept by, there's a fire keeper who keeps the fire going, and we don't ever want that to go out. And you can see there's different types of fuel we've allowed. We're just going to leave those on. You can sacrifice to get extra bonuses. We don't need that right now. Our hub level is 0 because we haven't fulfilled these requirements of housing, population, and building decorations. Not going to worry about that right now. So there's the ancient hearth. People will come back here periodically to take a break, to eat some food, to get warm, because in this game it is constantly raining. During drizzle, during clearance, during the storm, it's raining. It's always raining. It sucks. So here is our main warehouse. This can store an infinite amount of goods. So that is really nice to know. This game is not about managing your inventory. It's about production and keeping everybody happy and getting the resources and dealing with the special events. Not about managing hubs of storage, which is not my favorite thing in games. So let's take a look at the world. We have regular trees. So if we hover over a tree, it'll hello? If we hover over a tree, it'll say lush tree, has 2 charges. We get 1 piece of wood plus 100% chance of getting another piece of wood per the special modifier. A 15% chance of finding a piece of resin, 10% for wood fiber or plant fiber, and 5% for an egg. So the trees give us just sort of tons of wood and then a little bit of other stuff as we go. So as we chop down the trees, we're going to get tons and tons of fuel, but a little bit of random stuff we can use elsewhere. We also have a few starting resources. If we hold the B button, we can see resources. So we can see we've got plant fiber, flax field. This has it's gathered via a harvester's camp. This gives you plant fibers plus a 40% chance of clay and a 20% chance of insects. So that's awesome. We can find some crafting materials and some food potentially as we harvest this. Over here we have roots. Root deposit is a tangled net of living vines. It gives you a root and a 20% chance of an herb when it's harvested. This uses the scavenger's camp. You can see this is lit up. It's sort of colored in because we can build this. Whereas this is, oh no, this is also lit up. I thought this was not one you started with, but you can build the harvester's camp to start as well. So over here we have these small glades. These will have resources and nothing scary in them. They will just be good. You'll cut your way through the trees, find some stuff. There'll be more maybe patches of roots or patches of mushrooms or stuff like that for you to harvest. Also gives you some more space to play with because this is very little space and you have to sort of open up the area to build your town. Further away, you'll see these symbols that look like sort of dark goat heads or something. This is a dangerous glade. So this will give plenty of rewards, but have a threat of some kind. So like I was talking about, like a haunted cemetery or a forgotten temple or a, something like that that has a negative, and you'll have a time limit to deal with that or something bad will happen. There are also forbidden glades. This is really big, ominous looking symbol. This will have a very dangerous thing that will usually take a lot of resources, but solving it will usually give you really good stuff. And the glade itself will often have really good stuff. You can find ruined buildings that you can rebuild or scavenge. You can find camps with survivors hiding in them. You can find giant resource nodes. You find all sorts of good stuff in these glades. So let's talk about the rest of the UI really quickly. I say really quickly, but there's kind of a lot to go over, but this is all really important information. So we've started with a human. We have 1 human. They are free. They don't have an assigned job. So we know, like, for instance, we have 1, 5, 4. So we have 9 free people that aren't doing anything right now. And this 1 person is homeless. This will be the same everywhere, except here because a harpy has been assigned to work the fire. Now we can change that by clicking on it. But the harpy, when she's working the ancient hearth, increases global carrying capacity by 5. So people can gather more stuff when harpies are tending the furnace. You can also do other races, like for instance, the lizard people who we don't have give the hearth +1 global resolve. So everyone has +1 point to their happiness, which is very nice. You can open up their menus here and take a look at the things that impact their mood. So here's things that they like. So we've got being sheltered, having special housing, eating jerky, eating biscuits, eating pie, having clothing, having leisure, like drinking alcohol at a tavern, and having religious services. So that's how you can see what things you can strive for to make them happy. They all have different stuff, but they do overlap some. For instance, the beavers also like leisure, biscuits, and clothing, but they like education and luxury, as well as pickled goods. The harpies like biscuits, brawling, cleanliness, for instance. So sometimes what you might do is look at this and say, okay, biscuits are on all three of them. So if I got biscuit production up and running at some point, I could increase everybody's resolve. Whereas if I got pickled goods up and running, it would only really solve their special needs. Same with, we've got education overlaps a bit, leisure overlaps a bit. So we could look for those kind of things, as well as clothing. Two of them like clothing. They all want special housing, which is an easy thing to do at this point in the game, for me at least. Up here we've got our resources. You can just click to drop these down and check on how much food you have. Here's just raw and special food. This is just raw. Here are your building materials. So we have parts which are needed to make special buildings. I'd never run out of these, but it is possible. And wildfire essence if you want to build more of these buildings, ancient hearths. Here we have crafting resources. We've started with some copper bars and some stone. And we've got fuel and exploration, so we have a little bit of wood and some coal. Coal burns a lot longer in the hearth and is also a crafting resource for some other things. Here we have the time controls if you want to speed things up. Here's the hostility bar. So hostility of the forest, as it goes up, lowers the global resolve because it makes people anxious. The forest is magical and kind of alive, and it will sort of respond by creeping people out and causing problems. So you can see it goes up over time. It goes up by opening glades. It goes up by opening forbidden and dangerous glades. It goes up by number of villagers. It goes up as woodcutters chop down trees. Hearths lower it, and the queen's impatience actually lowers it. So as the queen gets impatient with you for not doing her requests, the hostility goes down because the queen is so powerful that her ire makes the forest calmer, which is a very interesting mechanic. So you can actually sort of hover around a high point in queen's impatience to make your life a little easier, which is dangerous but interesting. Over here we have our bonuses we talked about. This is drizzle right now. So we've got 4 minutes of drizzle. That will give us these two positive things. And then we'll have clearance. And then after clearance is storm. And we'll have this negative. And then as the hostility goes up, we will get more negative problems up here. Over here we have trade routes, which we can't do because we don't have a trading post yet. We have the consumption control. This is something you have to unlock, but you can kind of decide whether or not people are allowed to eat certain things. I'm not going to bother with this right now. You have the recipes panel. If you're ever like, hey, how do I make fabric? You can go in here, show all, and go, let's see, here's fabric. And you can go, okay, so the crude workstation can make it. Workshop, weaver, granary, leather worker. These are the places you can get fabric from, and the weaver is the best at it. It's got 3 stars, and we'll talk about that in the episode 1. Down here we have our current bonuses. So light as a feather is coming from the Harpy Firekeeper. We've got our Royal Outpost and our Gift of the Woodlands. Here we have our points that we spend on blueprints. Here's our construction options. So we have pathways. We have basic scavenging places like the woodcutter's camp, the harvester's camp. Here's food production, farm fields, but we don't have a farm yet. Here's housing. I have a lot of choices in here because I've unlocked them. You will have this one, just shelter. Here we have industry. So we've got workstations, rain collectors, a mine. This is something you have to unlock as well, but you can harvest copper and coal. City buildings, we can build more warehouses later on if we want to have resource dumps closer to like our industry or something. Another hearth we can build if we need to. And we also have trading posts, which are pretty important to get, I would say, fairly early. We can also build decorations. These are useful for upgrading your citadel, but other than that, I wouldn't waste too much space on these because they also take time and resources. You can destroy buildings with this icon, and then here you can select trees for harvesting. So we'll do that once we get a woodcutter up and running. All right, so that is everything that's going on. The goal of the game is to get this bar all the way full to the end before this red bar gets all the way full to the end. And then at these little pips, you will get blueprint rewards. And it looks like we get a lot of early blueprints here, which is fantastic. So we can choose what we're doing faster. You also start with 3. So if we click on this, I get to pick one of these blueprints to start with. And then I'll be given another selection after that because I have 2 more of 4 random things. So I have to choose one of these, knowing that I may not ever see it again. Now, what we remember seeing was that everyone up here liked biscuits. So I would probably take this bakery. I don't have a way to get flour yet, so I'll need to find a farm that can produce grain and a mill that can produce flour from the grain, but then we'll be in good shape being able to make biscuits. So I will probably select this bakery. And now we can kind of look at further buildings, but we'll save that for the gameplay episode of episode 1, when I will actually unpause it and tell my villagers to do some stuff, and you can see how the game plays. So I want to thank everybody so much for coming to this pretty long, actually, episode 0 here. So I hope this was informative. If you haven't played the game, this is probably a lot of information, but play the tutorial. It will talk about all this stuff, make you do it in little bite-sized pieces so it's not so overwhelming. But if you did enjoy this little tutorial and introduction to Against the Storm, which is one of my favorite games at the moment, then please like and subscribe and leave comments and all that good stuff for me. I would really, really appreciate that. And I will see you in episode 1 for some gameplay. Thank you so much for watching.